So welcome to our session today on saving time and reducing teacher workload, about finding purposeful workflows with regards to Apple, specifically looking at your iPad. I want to start off with some introductions. So my name is Lindsay Stuttard. I'm based in the UK. If you'd like to just introduce yourself in the chat and pop down an emoji relating to where you are joining us from. We'd love to know who's jumped in. I think we had several people sign up to join in from South Africa and Australia as well. So it'd be great to see where everyone is joining us from. I'm a digital teaching and learning specialist. I work for ACS International Schools. I'm an Apple Distinguished Educator, class of 2019. And I am one of the managers of the ACS International Apple Regional Training Center. We're a collective group of 3 UK-based schools that make up the Regional Training Center, newly qualified just this year. If you want to follow us for more information about our training sessions, which will be going on for the remainder of this academic year, you can follow us on Twitter at ACSRTC or myself personally at LindsDive85. There is our school website for more information, as well as our contact email address, acsinternationalrtc@gmail.com. I can see from a few people, we've got, some people from South Africa. We've got some of my wonderful peers are joining in today. Fantastic. So do keep adding that into the chat so we get to know where you're all joining in from. So today we will be doing some live demonstrations, as well as talking about how to connect some of these topics that I'll be discussing to how you work as a professional educator with Apple products. So hopefully you'll be able to take some of what we are talking about today and either directly apply it to yourself as a professional educator, or making use of these things with your students in the classrooms. Or maybe you'll walk away with just going, that's something new. I didn't know that I could do that. And I'd like to give it a try. So for this session, you do need to have your iPad available. Hopefully you've joined from a secondary device. We will be talking about a lot of the native tools for iPad. So we have your files, your notes, your camera, your voice memos, and Safari as well, the browser. So we'll be looking at all those tools and a few other ones that are not app specific. So just for a moment, before we dive into the meat of what we're talking about today, I'd like to open up to discussion, and you can pop this down in the chat so we can sort of see what everyone's thoughts are. But what is it that you spend most of your time working on day to day as a professional educator? Is it making resources? Is it looking for resources? Is it collaborating with colleagues? Is it lesson planning? Is it admin? Is it trying to find ways of engaging students? Is it marking and assessment? So I'll just give you about 30 seconds. Go ahead and pop that down into the chat now. So I can see in the chat that we have admin coming up quite a lot, as well as lesson planning, finding resources. That's what we spend a lot of our time doing. So hopefully today we can look at how some of these tools can maximize our efficiency, so that we don't spend so much time looking for resources or knowing where things are, or keeping ourselves organized, or doing the admin side, that we can find more efficient workflows and make use of the native tools of the iPad to support doing that. So thank you very much for sharing out. Just some initial thoughts that I had following our first lockdown in the UK, and then again with our second lockdown earlier on this year, is that our time is very precious. And that means we must maximize our efficiency. So even if we can shave a few seconds or a few minutes off every single day, it does add up in the long run. And if we can find more purposeful workflows to support moving on with our efficiency, hopefully that will provide us more time to spend doing the things that we really do enjoy about our job, and not as much time doing the parts that can be more time consuming. So the key learning outcomes for this session is participants will learn how the technology can reduce workload and support a positive well-being as well. How the technology can support teachers in marking, in planning, in sharing of resources and communication, and how the iPad has many built-in features that can help to reduce workload if you understand how they can work for you. So some quick wins to get started. Some of these I will be demonstrating and going into more detail, but just up front, 6 quick wins. Number 1 is to utilize shared notes on iPad for team meetings. This is a big one, and probably one of the most underused apps, I think, that is native to the iPad. The ability to integrate the camera for documentation purposes, how to make use of tools like Markup across a range of resources and not only just in photos, how to add audio recordings to different resources that you make or share, how to stay organized with your files, and manage your content with tabs in Safari. Now, I just want to say up front, some of these approaches make use of things like managed Apple IDs, which can be part of your education institution with the use of tools like Apple School Manager. And some of these things that I will discuss relate to specific hardware requirements of your iPad or specific software requirements of your iPad. So some of these may not be able to be applied to everyone, but you should know that they're out there, and if they can apply to you, how they will work. So let's dive in first with making use of shared notes. The benefits of shared notes are really quite enormous. First of all, it's easily accessible on the iPad, and it doesn't require you to log into a platform. As long as you have your Apple ID saved into your iCloud account, you should be able to access your notes through iCloud on the device. You have the ability to add a lot of additional content to notes, such as scanned documents, drawings that you create, images you've taken, links, embedded videos, and more. And it's very easy to be organized into folders when it comes to your notes. Being able to collaborate in shared notes means that you have a shared space with colleagues and/or students to easily share resources or specific information. And one of the newest features is the ability to see changes and highlights in real time. So if you've ever worked on a collaborative Google document and you're able to go in and see the changes that others have made on that specific file, you can now do that directly with Notes through the iCloud collaboration. Now, for our campus, what we make use of are the managed Apple IDs that our school has provided us. But if your school is set up to do personal Apple IDs, as long as it's personal to personal or managed to managed, you should be able to have that collaboration established. So for us on our campus or for other schools that make use of managed Apple IDs and use iCloud collaboration, the process is really quite simple for making a new shared note. So you'd go into your Notes app and create a new note. You'd name the note, so giving it a specific title, and then tap the More option. And within that, you want to make sure that you're choosing the option that says Share Note. And when that comes up, it's going to give you a variety of sharing options. My preferred option is to use Copy Link, because when you do that, it will then prompt you to start typing in the names of the users that you wish to share this with. And if you are part of an education group that makes use of managed Apple IDs, it should then pull from the inventory of all the existing users in your network to then be able to add into a shared note. So if I look at this example here on the left-hand side, you can see what I would see in my notes, which is all of my folders. And this is how I make use of notes to organize all the notes that I work with. So in the past, I've been invited to work with our kindergarten team with their meetings, and I can go in and I can see all of the notes that they've taken, one for each of the team meetings, and add in any thoughts that I need to. Additionally, I'm working on a specific project with another member of staff. We have shared notes for our ideas and things that we would need to have access to in our resources, all done through shared notes. So it's very easy to make folders and subfolders within iCloud collaboration with our shared notes. Now, on the right-hand side is a sample note. And what I've done in here is highlight a few of the different things that you can bring into either just a note or to maximize that a shared note. So you can definitely do formatting in a note. You can do text, drawing, tables, check marks, and you can customize the background to be lined or grid paper. And you can bring in different types of files. Now, what we found on our campus is this is a really good way of giving a lot of different files to students all in one go without them having to go to other platforms to download those files. If everything is sitting nicely organized within the note, all the student has to do is go and tap on the file, and it will prompt the iPad to look for an application to open that specific file. It's also a really handy way of giving the less commonly used file types, such as e-publication files or augmented reality files. So we make use of this a lot so that students don't have to go into our learning management system and constantly download the files that they need access to. It also provides sort of that go-to place if they ever make a mistake with a file. They can go back in and relaunch the file again from its original content. So in this example, you can see I brought in a Reality Composer project, which is an augmented reality file that a student can have access to. Additionally, there is an e-publication file, which was made in the app Book Creator. So if I've made a template that I want students to fill in on their own version of Book Creator, I can simply give them access to that file. They can tap on it, it will prompt the Book Creator app to open, and that file will immediately be launched in the app Book Creator. You can also add in text, drawing, or make use of Scribble, which is when you are handwriting and turning your handwriting into text. And you can also add in audio. So there is an audio file that was recorded in Voice Memos, another app I'm going to talk about later on, and you can have audio files into your notes as well. So this could be really handy if you're using a shared note and you're taking documentation on a student, to be able to add in an audio observation of something that you've seen, something that you've witnessed of the student that you need to keep track of. And I'll talk a bit more about audio files later on. And a fifth option would be to embed a YouTube video directly into a shared note. It's really handy to be able to just pop that right into your note, and you can actually watch your YouTube video directly in your note. So for things like team meetings or grade level meetings, it's really handy to have a lot of your resources all in your shared notes and provide that easy access to your peers, especially if you make a lot of the resources and you want your peers to have access to that. I find doing shared notes is really quite handy. So an example that we did as an approach to using shared notes was between myself, another teacher, and 81 students, all having access to this one shared note. Now, myself and the other teacher had the ability to make edits, whereas when we invited students to collaborate on this, we set their permissions to only be able to view, so they couldn't come in and make any changes to this. And the reason is we wanted to fill this note with instructions, a YouTube video, and files for them to access at home. And this was a way that we facilitated our end of year exhibition all through augmented reality. And we needed our students to be able to have access to the augmented reality files that they could then explore with their parents at home. But we needed to facilitate providing instructions and a YouTube video, as well as the different augmented reality files. And this was the simplest way of saying, look, it's all in one place. You don't have to do any downloading. When you tap on these files, it will prompt the correct app to open up, and you'll be able to see the AR in your iPad right at home. So this was a really handy way of us being able to organize everything. So I just want to do a quick demo now. I'm going to jump into my notes here. And as you can see on the side over here, I have all of my folders, and I work quite a lot out of the iCloud. I find that that is going to be the best one because I move around from my Mac to my iPad and vice versa, or to other devices that I have access to. And it just means that no matter which device I'm working on, as long as my Apple ID is logged in to the iCloud, I should be able to access this information. So I can come into an example, a conference idea that I'm talking about with one of my peers, and I can see right away all the activity that we've been doing on this particular file. So my peer is doing all of this, all her changes are coming up in blue. All of my changes are going to be in pink. And I really like that Notes has added that feature, and I think that's really quite handy. I can also come in and manage the shared note, and I can see who has access to it, what the name of the folder is where this note is sitting. And I can definitely either highlight all the changes, I can hide alerts, because you do get notified in Notes when someone makes a change in shared notes. And I can copy that link and then invite anyone else that I need to have access in there. So a lot of really great things that you can do with Notes. It's definitely one that I think is underrated, but has a lot of great approaches to maximize your time and efficiency. I think the fact as well that you can do folders within folders is really nice, especially for your notes. So let's take a look now at maximizing with camera. The benefits are definitely it's easily accessible on the iPad. We can move now beyond just taking photos, and we can enhance our photos with the use of Markup for drawing and writing. And it used to be that you'd have to take a photo and send it to another app to be able to then make markups or highlights or annotations or whatever it was that you needed to. And now we can do all that directly with the camera and the photos. We do make use of shared photo albums with different staff members for particular events, or when we have certain lessons. I teach digital skills for our early childhood, and I like to provide access to the photos that I take when the students are in the lessons with me to the teachers through shared albums, and we make use of that through our managed Apple IDs. You don't need any extra apps to be able to scan documents or scan QR codes. Your iPad camera can do all of that, and the ability to scan to make PDFs as well. So the camera has come a long way from just being a camera tool. With a lot more versatility to it now. So making use of the camera in multiple ways for documentation, for observation, and for scanning purposes. Again, we can do photos to document the learning in the classroom, or students can do that. We can make use of those shared albums for sharing photos, and we can also add comments to those shared photos. So if we've got a collective album that several staff members have access to, if I'm putting photos in, I can provide context about what those photos, or those videos, I should say, are showing. I can pop that in as a comment. So another teacher can have a look and go, oh, okay, that's the context for what these photos are showing. Scanning documents to make PDFs. Again, being able to use Markup. Definitely video creation. And the most recent feature, which is being able to utilize something called live text. And the reason I put an asterisk next to this is this does depend on the type of hardware you have access to. So for our staff, we have iPad 6th generation. Our students have iPad 8th generation. Now our students can make use of this because their hardware has been updated and they have a newer camera, whereas the staff at the moment have iPad 6th gens, and we can't necessarily make use of this function. But I'm hoping that we will update those iPads in the coming months for our staff as well. So for an example, I can use the camera. I can go up to wherever text is appearing in the real world, and I can use the live text feature. So if you look at the photo that's shown here, in the top right-hand corner, there's a little box with 3 lines in it. That is live text. And what it will do is it will detect wherever there is text and identify it for me. And then it will give me some options as to what I can do with that text. I can either copy certain parts of it, I can select it all and highlight all the text I'm seeing. I can even translate it. So if it's in a different language, or if I have a student that's not speaking English as their first language, they could copy some of this through live text and translate it. Or I can take that text and then share it elsewhere to something like Notes. And so I'll go ahead and demo how that will work right now. So if I go into my camera, I've got a collection of Post-its here. I'm just going to go up to these ones. And you can see those little yellow lines are appearing around wherever it's trying to detect some text. And if I tap now on that live text feature, it's now giving me those options of what do you want to do. I'm going to do select all. I'm going to tap on top of where the text has been highlighted. I'm going to share that. and I can do several things. I can save it to files as just text. I can send it to different people. I can put it into Book Creator or Notability. I'm going to go ahead and pop that into Notes. And you can see it's converted whatever it's picked up in that post-it to text that I can then utilize in another application. So it's a really handy feature. It's part of the iPadOS 15 updates that just came out, but it does have certain hardware requirements in order for it to work properly. So that is live text. So let's take a look at Markup. I've already talked briefly about this with some of the other topics, but it's definitely a benefit because we don't need any extra apps for mark making. We're able to move from a lot of different apps with the same tool set, which is really quite helpful to provide continuity for our students. It's definitely easy to use for all ages. We start utilizing this with our pre-K children who are between the ages of 3 and 5 to take photographs and to then add personification elements to those photographs. You can highlight onto important documents, including things like PDFs. You can make use of Scribble, which is again that handwriting to text feature. And one of my favorites, being able to annotate on website articles. So taking learning further, making use of markup in multiple ways. Again, I've talked about a few of these, being able to draw on photos, being able to draw in notes and PDFs, but now we can start to bring in drawing up on different websites. And again, it's the same tool set. So whether students have used drawing tools in an app like Keynote, it's the same tools that come back again and again. I think the only limitation is they cannot use the Paint tool when they're working in something like photos or notes, which is something available in Keynote Pages and Numbers. But it does provide that continuity of a set of tools as they move across the different platforms. We can transform learning opportunities by moving away from paper resources to more digital. And because there's a variety of tools that make use of markup, it doesn't limit us to only things that we can create as PDFs. And for our younger students, we've used it in the past as a way of having an interactive whiteboard. So making use of markup on a tool like Keynote, where every student has their own individual slide, and they can make use of those drawing tools to go ahead and work on their slide, much like they would as an individual little whiteboard. So one example I wanted to talk about is the ability to convert web articles to PDFs that students or that teachers could then go in and mark up directly on their iPad rather than having to download the PDF from somewhere else. So you could easily just select a website and turn on what's known as Reader View. If we look at the URL at the top there where it says bbc.co.uk, there are two little A's on the left-hand side of that bar. And if we tap on that, and again, not every website will do this, but if it's available, you can tap on that and turn on what's called Reader View. And what this does is it strips away the non-essential content. So any ads, any extra links, any extra tabs will be stripped away, and it will just be the content that you want your students to have access to. Then you would tap on the share button in the top right-hand corner and scroll down to where it says Markup. And what this does is it turns the entire web page article into a PDF, which you can then mark up on. So let's take a look at that now. So turning on the Reader View, it's stripped that down right to just the article I need. Scroll down under Share to where it says Markup, and I get those markup tools right away. And as you can see, it's just made this almost as one full document. And you can just keep scrolling up and down and making the annotations or marks as needed. When you're finished, you can then save to files, rename it, because what it will do is give a standard name holder right there, which is usually just the website and then the date and time. But you want to make sure that you give it a different name for ease of finding it later on. And so that is the demo of doing the PDF versions of the websites for annotation and markup. One little trick I will add in is when you are working in something like that in Safari, there is an option underneath the PDF that has been made where you can add another page. and it's just a blank page. So it's a great way of then extending just the annotation part of going, yes, I know that you've got this article and you've converted it to a PDF very simply and you've done the markup, but we can add in a secondary page that's just blank. And utilizing those markup tools still, students can then answer questions, or they can make additional comments directly in that same file. So you've got the PDF as the first page, and the second page would be this blank space that you can ask them to put whatever it is that you want in. And it will then combine them together as one final PDF that they can then submit to you how you choose. Let's move on now to the power of voice. And this is making use of a tool called Voice Memos. So Voice Memos, if you haven't used it before, I highly recommend that you take a look at it. It is a native tool to the iPad. It's not anything extra that's been added in, but it's essentially the ability to almost mimic like what Notes does, where you can just write things down and add things in. This will essentially make a collection of audio recordings for you. And I've seen teachers use it with students for doing interviews. I've seen students use it for digital storytelling, where they're recording their voice. And it's a fantastic tool. It's very, very simple to use, and it has a lot of power behind it. So some of the benefits of Voice Memos: it automatically timestamps and adds a location for whenever you make a recording. Now, this may not seem like it's very relevant to most of us, but if you're having to take observations on students for behavioral purposes, being able to go out onto the playground or on a field trip, you can easily take a voice memo recording of something that you've observed, whether it's positive or negative, and it has that timestamp associated with it. So if you need to collect evidence for behavioral purposes of your own observations, I think Voice Memos is really quite powerful for that. It is easy to use for all ages. We do start making use of this with our little 2-year-olds, of teaching them about audio recordings, and they get to have a lot of fun just pressing the record button, start and stop, and then hearing their voice and seeing the little sound wave that they create. Your voice memo recordings can be incorporated into other file types, so they don't just have to live in voice memos. You can make use of them in things like Keynote or Pages, or if you want to share them into an iMovie project, that's another way of utilizing those types of files. It's very easy to edit and trim these as needed before you then share them to another file, and it is available offline. So as I mentioned, you can definitely bring your audio into other files. I know in certain parts of our school, we make use of Keynote portfolios for students, where the student has a Keynote file with collaboration with the teacher, and the teacher has the ability throughout the year to go into that student's Keynote portfolio and leave audio feedback. Now, the reason we would do this rather than text is that we might not have very strong readers to be able to read a lot of text that a teacher could leave as feedback. So by using audio, we're providing more access for the students to get our feedback in different ways. It's also very time-saving to record audio than typing if you are not a strong typer. And if we do leave audio feedback for students, we're conveying the emotion that is not necessarily conveyed in text. So if we're trying to show enthusiasm, if we're trying to convey a different type of tone, sometimes it gets lost in text. But by having the audio, it's basically your teacher is appearing in your file, and you're getting to have that sort of personal approach that your teacher is there essentially giving you that feedback. So this is what it looks like in Voice Memos. On the left-hand side, you have your list of recordings that will be done in chronological order, from the most recent at the top to the oldest near the bottom. And they are all listed with their names based on the location or based on the file name that you give it. You can rename a recording, and you can check the timestamp of when it was done. The audio recording for section 3 there is the sound wave, so you can scroll across and have a look at your sound wave file, which helps when you're trying to do edits or trimming. The record button is really very simple. It's just red for start and stopping a recording. And then you have your playback options of going backwards 15 seconds, forwards 15 seconds, or with play. Now, at the very top in that red rectangle are sort of your more options of what you can do. You can share your audio recordings, as I said. So when you tap on share, when you've selected a recording, there are some different ways that you can move that file around. You can also favorite with the heart one of your audio recordings. So if you've got standard directions that you're always giving students for essay writing or for submitting certain types of work, you can just record yourself one time with those directions and make that audio recording of directions available as many times as the students need, but it saves you having to do it over and over again each time. You can organize into your files or delete your audio recordings. So let's jump in now to voice memos. So as you can see, this is what it would look like. If I go back across here, let's take a listen.
Welcome to our talk today. I am delighted to go through how to maximize using shared notes for you in your classroom to increase your teacher workload and efficiency.
Now, one of the things I will highlight is sometimes when we do audio recordings, we can forget our train of thought and we can end up with these long pauses. Now, rather than have to go back and edit all of those, what we can do is click on our options up here and we can do something called skip silence. So anytime in your voice memo that there's sort of a big gap or a big pause, or for students, they can do skip silence. And it doesn't mean that we have to go in and make changes to the audio files. It will automatically just skip over anywhere that there appears to be a pause or a silence. Excuse me. We can also speed it up, or slow it right down as need be. Additionally, we can go into edit, and much like you would edit a video clip, we can trim all of that down very, very easily. So just the way that you would trim down a video file or an iMovie project, you can do that with your audio files as well. Okay, and then again with your share options, you can edit, you can favorite, you can move these around. You've got different places that you can place these audio files. Okay, so that is voice memos. To keep organized, I really highlight the Files app. So if you're a Google Drive person, this is sort of the Apple equivalent. It's being able to understand where your files are organized and how you can make use of the different folders available to you. And we do really start to focus more on this, especially when we're teaching our students how to be organized as well. So the benefits of files beyond organization are you have your folders and your subfolders. You can definitely have shared folders for collaboration, and it doesn't require you to have to log in, which can be a bit of a problem when you're working with Google Drive. As long as your Apple ID is logged in on your device to your iCloud account, you shouldn't have to log in to be able to see your files. And it is very easy to see where your files are essentially living when it comes to your iCloud or your iPad. So some of the suggestions that I have given to staff that I work with is to make use of shared folders for grade level teams, shared folders for students to a teacher, one-to-one folders for teacher and a student. So for example, a resource student that might need extra help or needs help being organized, we can do it in that way. We can do folders as well that are based on the app or the program that made the files. So for the Apple apps, I'll get to show you what those look like in a moment. But knowing where your files are visually is also really helpful for students or for teachers. And being able to make use of a feature like tags. So we know that everyone has their own naming conventions when it comes to files and folders, and that sometimes we don't always keep to those same types of naming conventions. But if we can make use of tags, we can easily find the type of content that we're looking for, even if naming conventions aren't matching up when we do a search. So here are some examples of my folder systems that I have. I can easily see everything when it's in the icon view or when it's in the columns view through the different options there. So whatever your preference is, I really like seeing all of the folders because visually I can see what is going on in those folders. And what I mean by that is who has collaborative access with my work. So I can see right away any of my folders that have the people icon. I know that those are collaborative folders, and I know that other members of staff within my network have access to those resources as well. I also really like the fact that the Apple apps will designate different folders visually for the work. And so it then helps me also support staff and students of going, well, your files that you're working on with Keynote should live in your Keynote folder within your iCloud Drive. And it's just really handy to understand what you can put into those types of folders and how you can organize them. Additionally, I like to make use of the emojis, especially if it's files that are going to be, folders that are going to be shared with students. We can definitely make use of the emojis to help have that visualization as well, especially if they're younger students that can't read augmented reality or have trouble reading Reality Composer. We can definitely do it in that way with the little emojis to help them. So I'll just jump into my files now to show you here. One of the things that I wanted to highlight is my tags. So you have your standard tags here at the bottom. Usually they come through as just colors, but then you have the ability to start customizing them. So as I mentioned before, I may want to have all of my augmented reality resources at the drop of a hat, but I may not name all of my augmented reality resources the same. So if I try and search for them, I may only get a select few. Whereas if I make use of the tags, I can tap on AR resources and it will find anything that has been tagged. Now to tag a resource, you simply do a long hold and then you have your tags. And you can see I can go ahead and tap on any of the existing ones or make a new tag. And that way I know, as you can see right here, I have 2 that are named AR and I have a 3rd that's named augmented reality. So if I just type AR, I'm not going to see that augmented reality one necessarily come up. But if I make use of the tags, then I know I will. Additionally, under Apple resources, this folder, the naming convention, has nothing to do with Apple, but I know it has a lot of things in there that I need that are related to Apple, and that is why I've used that tag there. So you could get in the habit of teaching students how to tag different things that they need access to, or for yourself, tagging things with specific grade levels or to specific subjects or to specific resource types such as assessments is really handy because it doesn't then affect the naming convention that you might give to a file or a folder. So lastly, and this is probably one of the more recent updates that came out from iPadOS 15 that I think is going to be a real game changer, is the ability to work within Safari to make a group of tabs of your most used websites. And this can be a collection of websites that you need on a day-to-day basis or based on specific classes that you're teaching. You can also bring in websites that have been shared with you if you make use of the messages feature within your iPad, or organize websites directly into shared notes. So if you need to give access to a lot of websites rather than copy and pasting links, you can do that as one collective group. So the reasons we would do this help students to set up tabs for easy searching or for easy organization, especially if they're going to be using different websites on a day-to-day basis. You can make a Monday group, a Tuesday group, a Wednesday group, Thursday group, Friday group. And every day that they come to school, they know I go into my Safari, I can tap on my Monday group and I have all the websites I'm going to need for that day. You can organize your tabs based on categories, however you organize yourself or what works for you. And as I mentioned, you can share a collection of links all in one go directly through Notes. So I will skip this example because I don't think the quality of these images is the best representation, and I will go directly to the demo. So if I go into Safari, I've got my normal browser window up here, and I've got my sidebar option. But as you can see further down, I have a group called News Websites. And if I tap on that, it will automatically bring up 3 news websites that I've allocated to that group. And you can see them all right there. So we have BBC, CNN, and Al Jazeera. Additionally, I make use of a lot of Apple resources. So I have a collection of Apple websites. And you can see right there, my browsing has changed completely to show me my Apple websites that I would need. So the apple.com, the Apple Teacher Learning Center, and Apple School Manager. Now you can create as many of these as you want. As I said, again, you can do it based on a category. You can do it based on a day, knowing which resources you're going to have access to. But one of the things that you can do is a long hold on a group. And you can see a few options. It's sort of done a little summary at the bottom of all those websites. But at the top, it says copy links. And so if I want someone in my department or someone on my team or students, for example, to have access to all those websites in one go, I can do copy links. I can jump back over to my notes. I'll just go to my sample one that I was working on so I don't mess with this original file. And I can do paste. And what that's done is it's organized that directly into a group of those websites, organized it very nicely under the category, and it doesn't require me to have to do copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. So it seems like a very simple little thing, but it can have a really big impact if you're doing this a lot. And especially for students, if you have to give them a lot of websites in one go, or if they have to give you a lot of websites in one go as resources, they can do it through that way. So I just think about our resource students that maybe have difficulty typing long URLs or navigating on the browser. If we can do things like these groups, it's going to be really helpful for them. And so again, you still have your regular browsing space with your normal one tab up here and as many browser windows as you want to bring in. But again, you have your separate group for content that you're just going to need access to on a more regular basis. So that is working with Safari. Touching on Apple Teacher very briefly, because if you want more information about some of the things I've talked about or some additional content from Apple regarding using your time more efficiently or navigating with your iPad and the native apps, is do check out the Apple Teacher Learning Center and look at the fundamental skills, or the foundational skills, I think they're called, to learn more about what comes standard in your iPad and how you can make more use of it. So just to wrap up our session, if you want to pop in the discussion, I'll give you about sort of 30 seconds to a minute to jot down what are some of your key takeaways from today. Maybe it's that you've been shown an app in a new way that you didn't think about using in that way before. Maybe it's seeing how iCard collaboration, especially with something like managed Apple IDs, can really support you more. Maybe it's something that you go away and go, actually, I'd really like to try this with my students. Maybe it's the Safari tab groups. Or making use of voice memos. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to a minute to pop that in the chat, because we can always learn from each other. Just while you're doing that, I will show one more thing that I touched on very briefly, but didn't get the chance to explore too much, is under photos. So rather than staff from all different parts of the campus having to upload photos to our Google Drive, I really like the use of shared albums directly in our photos. And as you can see down here, I have quite a lot of them. And I was doing a sample of this today for one of our teachers. I will be making videos as compilations of work that we've done throughout the year. So if I make a shared album, I can invite specific staff members, for example, this 5th grade photo album in, but I can also attach comments. And this is then providing context for someone who needs access to this information to support what they're creating. So I do this with our different grade levels when I support. If it's a lesson, I can pop a quick comment in there just to sort of give context, especially if the teacher wasn't there to see it happen live. But then they get sort of the understanding of what was going on in that lesson, and I can just attach that comment. And the whole process takes about 10 seconds. Whereas if you're trying to upload somewhere else, it can take a lot longer. But on my end, I can then pull those photos out. Doesn't matter if they get deleted, because I've got them and I can use them in something like an iMovie or a Clips project. So let's have a look through the chat. So using notes for team meetings, like the idea of voice memos and collaboration and notes. For students to use markup on a website article, absolutely. Skip silence in voice memos is amazing. Learn something new about files and how to organize, wonderful. We have a question here. So I would check, Courtney, and just see this is an iPadOS 15 update. So it's possible you might be on the iOS 14, so it might just need an update in order for you to be able to see that in Safari. Yep, and Kara's put down the new Safari features. Fantastic, amazing. So thank you very much, everyone.